Hi, everyone. Happy to have everyone with us. I am joined today by Livia Antal and Bogdan Mogoshanu. By lucky coincidence, we're all free Amsterdam-based Romanians. And in today's session, we will take a deeper look at creatives because regardless of your industry, every campaign can benefit from stronger creatives. And before jumping into my questions, I would like to let the two speakers that we have introduce themselves and their companies.
Sure, I'll start. My name is Livia Antal. I'm a video producer for Playtica in the newly founded studio, Jura Studio, based in Amsterdam. I have been in the gaming industry for 7 years now. I've worked primarily with mobile games in casual, hyper casual, and social casino. I started as a graphic designer, and then I became a motion designer, and now I oversee the creative strategy and production for UA videos in the Yuda studio. I am very familiar with every step of the production since I've been a designer myself, and this helps me work very closely with art teams and guide them through every step of the process. And I serve as the glue between art teams and UA specialists.
Hello, everybody. My name is Bogdan, head of partnerships at Storytech for the last 2 years. I've been in the digital space for the last 10 years with various roles in the commercial departments. My current expertise resides in optimization of post-production processes and how to generate content at scale with the help of technology.
So now that we learned a bit more about your experience, I would like to ask you both, how important do you feel creatives are to campaign success?
Yeah, I believe that they're very important. A creative can make or break the performance of your campaign. In today's age, targeting is becoming more and more automated, so it's very important that you have a successful creatives. It is important to keep creativity at the heart of campaigns and design effective ads that speak to their intended audience.
Also think that creatives are extremely important. We usually say that data is king. I think now that content is king has returned as a way of saying, and we're actually seeing, based on what Livia just mentioned earlier, that 25% of ROI comes from data and segmentation, and then 75% comes off the type of content that is being produced, where, of course, there is still a lot of room for improvement. More segmentation requires more content, more audience, more campaigns require more content. So it is important to address the topic with precise care and focus.
That's a very interesting statistic, and I think that also probably plays into the fact that we're kind of approaching this age of privacy, let's say. So a lot more platforms are kind of taking away certain type of segmentation that they allowed before, and you're also not allowed to target a user as easier as you could beforehand. So I'm guessing in this situation, message is probably way more important than settings you could make in the platform. So with this in mind, I'm guessing, especially in Livia's day-to-day life, that you have a lot of processes that allow you to choose the right creatives for a new campaign. And I'd like to talk more about how do you find the right creative, and how do you get your creative team to produce images in line with your vision and on a faster timeline. I know Bogdan probably has some very interesting insights from his clients as well.
Sure. I would want to start off by saying that it's very important to understand your product and understand what your audience loves about your product, and try to test a lot of those ideas and test them with your audience. Different styles, different concepts, see what they like, what they don't like. Sometimes something that your community loves, new users don't love. So a lot of testing is very important. over time, with this testing, you build a framework and a formula of what your audience likes and what they respond to. And it's very important to keep track of these things. Write strong briefs and make sure that your creative teams have all the assets that they need to make the process as easy as possible to create them.
From my perspective, from a creative operations perspective, I would say optimization of campaigns is very important. Marketeers have always been interested in how to optimize their campaigns, optimize their assets. So now, of course, as you mentioned earlier, with the rise of ad channels who are more automated in terms of distributing or segmenting their content, they are looking towards optimizing the production of their assets. So, of course, it is important to have a streamlined flow to be able to generate the assets, the volumes that you need, with a look on the budget, because most often we see that the marketing budget is split between ad spend and asset creation. So the more efficient you are with your asset creation budget, the more budget you have then for ad spend. So my take, of course, comes from as an advice to just take a closer look on the production process and how can you optimize it to generate assets efficiently.
Very interesting. I'm curious also what you see in terms of format, if you find that one format works way better than others, because what we've been hearing a lot in the past, maybe 1 year or 2 years, is that video is starting to become very important. And I would say a lot of the people we talk to on a day-to-day basis, I think, run almost exclusively video ads or predominantly video ads. So I'm curious also in that segment, what do you think? Are banner ads dead, or do you think banners still have a place in a campaign?
Yeah, I think banners are still very important. I think, like you mentioned, mostly the conversation revolves around videos, but honestly, banners can also have some great results. I would recommend using a combination of banners and videos. We primarily use videos, but banners are also making quite the comeback. So I've started my career working on designing banners, and now I'm coming back to banners as well. So
Banners.
So we definitely see as well an increase of videos that are being produced through the platform. But if you think of platforms such as Google, they still require both banners, statics, as well as text to be added so they can mix it properly. I think the question also relates to the mediums where you're advertising. Of course, if you have, let's say, more social approach, then video is definitely more entertaining. But if you're focused also on display, video in banners can be sometimes quite heavy. So in that situation, most of the advertisers are still focused on traditional banner ads, who definitely drive engagement, and is just another medium that should not be overlooked.
Do you have any insights in terms of video, for example? Do you have any type of insights, or on maybe which are channels that produce higher ROIs? And also, I'm curious what types of tools and strategies you use to actually create engaging video ads while keeping the costs still manageable.
From my perspective, we definitely see shorter videos performing best, or let's say being the ones that are most used or most commonly generated within the platform. However, there are brands who go up to 30 or even 60 seconds length of the video, and still have, let's say, a different approach when it comes to their campaigns and the combination of assets that they are selecting. What we see, or let's say from the types of industries, is that there are some industry specifics. So, for example, educational educational platforms are usually focused towards slightly longer, usually having captions in it, while, for example, other platforms such as FMCG or even gaming have sometimes shorter ads, because also the attention span is shorter. So this is my take on that. I'll pass it to Livia, and maybe we can discuss a bit on the optimization part.
Yes. Actually, we've been experimenting a lot with longer formats. So till now, mostly we did 15 to 30 seconds videos, but 45 or 1 minute videos can also be quite successful depending on the platform. So if you use YouTube ads or Moloko, then they recommend using longer formats. So actually, it depends also on the network, I would say.
I'll redirect the second part of the question to you again, Livia, because I know it's more in your ballpark. So the second part of the question was regarding what tools and strategies do you use to create effective video ads?
Yeah, so for tools, we use Adobe products, After Effects, Premiere, Photoshop. As for strategies, we employ different strategies for different products, of course. Over my career, I worked with products that had quite small budgets or bigger budgets. So it's important to meet those needs. At the end of the day, the cost of video ads is determined by the available UA budget and also your ROI targets. So my strategy to tackle this issue was to build a network of vendors at different price points. So a very cheap tier, so in the hundreds, 200 to 600 euro per video. This is like brand new video concept, including all the versions. So just to be clear, then in mid-range between 2,000 and 3,000 euros. Again, cost per video with all versions included. And also a higher end, up to 10K, where we get to be more creative, we get to have more production value, maybe create some new illustrations or film something out of the ordinary. This way you cover the needs of every single product.
Interesting.
From our perspective, of course, it is important to understand that automation is not a limiting factor. So our take towards it was to integrate actually with the Adobe Creative Suite and to empower creatives to generate master templates, hero assets using these platforms, and then being able to create higher number of iterations faster than humanly possible, with the help of technology, following, of course, the guidelines that were put in place by the designers. So then, of course, if you are interested in advertising towards different markets, to different platforms, that adds a certain level of complexity by language, by formats. So sometimes automation can bring some efficiencies in terms of time and costs that are associated with post-production.
That was a great insight. And I wanted to also ask you, what do you think is the soft spot when it comes to your tier system, for example, Olivia? I know you said, and same for Bogdan, because I know he oversees quite a lot of what his clients are doing. So you've mentioned that you sometimes invest less in videos, and I would assume this is what our advertisers are doing as well. I see a lot of people trying to do more user-generated content, which usually has like lower cost associated. And then once you go the higher tier, you probably can get more artistic and more creative with the video assets that you produce. So have you found that maybe the most expensive one doesn't perform as well as you expected it?
Yes, of course. I believe that the sweet spot is the mid-range videos. The cheaper videos compromise on quality a lot of times, and yeah, while they work with small budgets, I think if you have a good quality product, it would be a shame to compromise, and it can also hurt your brand. And the higher end, there's more risk because it's more investment. And it can happen that they do not perform, and then you lost quite a lot of money. So it's not ideal. So the sweet spot would be this mid-range.
From my perspective, what we see in general is that the well, let's say preference in terms of budget allocation is that ideally they would keep up to 20 to 30% at most to content creation, and then use the rest for the actual ad spend. So then, of course, if you need to use this amount of money to create the actual content, it is important to either focus on, find that sweet spot that Livia was mentioning, and focus on the content, good content that can be addressed to specific markets, specific audiences, or within that budget to be able to generate also qualitative assets that can be, let's say, used or reused over time. Otherwise, it can be a risky situation if you try to reach to everybody or to create assets for everyone without thinking about the quality or about the message that you want to put in there. And instead of having, let's say, better results, to actually see a decrease in the ad performance.
I know you mentioned when we were talking also about the budget. I know you've mentioned vendors, and I assume that some of the vendors are creative agencies. I wanted to ask you both, where do you see creative agencies come into play in this ecosystem where you have, advertisers, then people who actually own the product, the agency, and the platforms that you actually buy media in? Do you think creative agencies have a role to play?
Yes, of course. Nowadays, there's a trend in building your own internal art team and creating all the content with them. However, the importance of external agencies shouldn't be overlooked because every creative agency has its own strengths and can build upon something that maybe you don't have internally. They can approach ideas in a fresh way than maybe you have done in the past. So one thing that we like to do, for example, is if we have a hero creative and we've been running it for a long time, and we've done a lot of variations on it, but we still want to prolong its life, we would send it to a different vendor than the original one and ask them to recreate it in their own style, in their own take, in order to just have a fresh new version of it. Some vendors have great design skills, other vendors have a better pacing, and these things can be reflected in the creative. So in the past, for example, we had a video with 3 different levels, showing how you progress through the 3 different levels. And we sent it to a new vendor, and they had this idea of a level counter that we didn't have in before, and it built upon the main story of the video, and that performed better. So they can also improve what you already have.
I second Livia on this. For us, creative agencies are extremely important, are our main partners to expand and use the technologies. We do also have a focus, of course, on end brands, but most often we see that there is a triangle between an end brand looking for technologies that can make them future-proof, having the creative team, which sometimes can be either an in-house operation for larger brands, but a lot of the times it's a creative agency who is the, let's say, administrator of their automation account. So then, of course, you still need to have the initial production. You still need to have that concepting, that ideation, the understanding of somebody who has had maybe experience from different projects, different clients, who can transfer that knowledge to the current project. And then what I think the most disruptive element here is that a lot of agencies now are looking also to get automation, because the traditional model was cost per hour. So you would need a certain amount of assets or certain services, and then you would be billed for the hours that a multidisciplinary team would spend working on that project. Now, if you're talking purely about content creation, iterations, versioning, localization, this is becoming more of a commodity, more accessible. Hence, now brands are less willing to pay for manual labor in this. So they are forcing somehow agencies to get into automation technologies and see which part of their processes can be automated. So for this particular reason, we do collaborate strongly with major agencies in the market, both independent, both of the, let's say, big network groups, and it just makes their life easier.
That's it's kind of interesting to hear from you both and kind of understand that what you're generally seeing is a mix of both internal creative teams and then external creative agencies that power all of the marketing content for most of your clients or for your actual brand. And I was wondering, with externalizing this type of work, are there any challenges when it comes to compliance? Because, for example, if we're talking from our perspective, we are obviously all three based in Europe, which is a very fragmented market. So you will have different regulations depending on the countries you want to market in. And if you go even further, if you go global, you have even more differences. So I'm curious, what compliance challenges do you see marketers face when they're running campaigns in multiple countries? And what are some of your favorite tips of how to tackle these quickly?
I'll start with this one. Indeed, compliance is mandatory. It's probably the most important part, or the part that is not necessarily visible, but it has to be there. So, talking from working with brands from the alcohol and tobacco industry, from the gambling industries, from financial industries who are highly regulated, it's often important that if you're the one responsible to create the initial concept and then distribute that concept towards the markets, that each market is then, of course, responsible to add or to insert the legal elements. And if you're just thinking about text disclaimers that are usually showed somewhere in the bottom of the on the bottom of the ad, well, there are also markets maybe outside Europe, for example, in Asia, where you need to have a black ribbon on top of which you apply white text larger than your, let's say, call to actions or other text in the ad, just to make it more visible. This kind of course, comes with a creative challenge as well, because you still need to have a nice creative. So it is important to think about using a template solution that also facilitates this kind of control over what the assets are being displayed. Or another example is that if you're a gaming or a gambling solution, the prices that you're offering might be limited or might be, let's say, different cap depending on the market. So then, of course, you want to make sure that if you're advertising in the UK or if you're advertising in Spain, you are showing the correct price for the correct audience. However, without compromising on quality or compromising on the message that is being delivered. Hence, having the possibility to control how the final iterations will look like from a creative perspective is not only making the life of the media teams easier, but it also puts you as a brand in a safer spot to make sure that your brand guidelines are respected, but it also compliant with the laws in the country where you're advertising in.
So from your side, if I understand correctly, basically your clients can just input all of this information in your system, and then once they start iterating and localizing the assets, then they already have, if they set the right templates in place, they already have all of the guidelines added there. Do they get, if any of the assets maybe don't have the right, don't follow the rules strictly, do they get any type of alert, notification?
Yeah, so that first of all, you can be you can set as a creator, as a designer, you can set the limitations or the freedom of of those creating iterations to be more or less strict. So let's say if you're very strict, you can just whenever they are selecting the country, which might be associated with specific fonts, if we're talking about GCC or APAC or Europe, and that not only fonts, but also having already displayed the logo, the banner, the text that has to be associated with your, let's say, legal requirements. Then, of course, this is basically no room for error. If you're more flexible, because sometimes we see that there is some kind of artwork that has to be uploaded into the final creative that represents the legal disclaimer due to the changes that happen very often in some of the markets. Then our take to that is that we have technology that can understand what the brand guidelines are and can flag if an asset is not complying. So, for example, just a quick one, we have an automotive brand who is advertising motorcycles. And according to some rules, you cannot do advertisement for these kind of vehicles unless the drivers have full protection gear on them. So then if you're using a driver that has, let's say, missing helmet or protective gloves, the platform can notify you that there is a missing element. So then, of course, you are responsible to take a certain action. On top of that, of course, there is also a review process in place with most of the brands. So there is some kind of QA that is being done post-iteration to make sure that the assets are actually compliant.
Oh, interesting. A QA from their side or from your side?
From the client side.
From the client side. That makes a lot of sense. I'm gonna pass the same question also to Livia, because your company is basically working also with casual gambling games or social casino, which I know can also be subject to regulation in quite a lot of instances.
Yes. We also try to display 21 plus on all the ads in order to make sure that people understand that these games are not for kids. We chose 21 plus just to be safe, so even over 18 plus, so we can cover more markets. As well as we avoid dollar signs or any associations with real currencies, because we don't want to make any confusion. These are social casino games. They're with game currency and not with real money. So it's very important to make that distinction already on an ad law.
Do you see also, because I know, turning it again to Europe, I know that there are regulations coming out from the European Commission that actually are trying to put guardrails in place for different platforms. So I'm wondering, especially for you, Livia, because you work quite closely with like content distribution, basically Facebook, TikTok, and so on. Do you see them regulating the content, and do you feel like they have already put in place some type of compliance for the ads that you're running?
Yeah, so in my experience, there is a difference between networks. Some networks are more conservative than others and more restricted than us. Specifically, Facebook is quite conservative. So this is from, I'm going to tell you an experience from another company that I worked for in the past, where we worked with, we had a game that was medical themed, and you had to make operations on different body parts, and a lot of the ads consisted of showing these different body parts. This created a lot of issues, especially with Facebook, because of nudity regulations. We couldn't even show a male torso, for example. So these things, we had to be quite creative on how much we cover and how much we show.
And do you think that this also impacts, for you specifically and in your perspective, did this impact the return of the campaign that you were running?
Yeah, so for this specific case, it did, because the more visual and the more nudity you would show, the better the creatives would perform. But since this was regulated, we needed to be quite creative on walking the tightrope between regulations and performance.
So we're getting kind of close to the end, and I would really like to end this with marketers' wrongs and marketers' rights. So I want to ask you, what are your favorite tips for boosting campaign performance through creatives that our audience maybe hasn't heard yet? And then I will also ask you, what do you think the biggest mistakes are? So let's start off with the tips.
Sure. My advice is to not be afraid to make your ads entertaining. We are competing for attention with entertainment and with content. So it's good to also raise the bar on the creators as well. And the best creatives are somewhere between presenting your product but also entertaining, being memorable, shareable, and so on. So that would be one of my favorite advices, my favorite do's. But as for don'ts, I would say don't try to tell too much in one ad. It can be very tempting to advertise a lot of benefits and features that your product has in one ad and just cram it in as much as possible. Don't do that. Split every benefit and every feature that you want to show on its own dedicated ad, and show it to your users, see which one they prefer, and iterate from there.
That's very accurate, very accurately described. From our perspective, what we see, and this also comes sometimes as a surprise, even from the bigger brands, from where you would say that they are well more versed in terms of advertising, is that there is still a big chunk of advertisers who have the approach of one size fits all, which is obviously not the case in today's world. So it is really important to, of course, have that segmentation done, but then also to feed them with the relevant content at the relevant time. And that is, I think, one of the issues that we see, as well as sometimes maybe too crowded or very dull designs. And there are various reasons behind it. But in today's world, it's important to be creative, be courageous, and have the possibility to create engaging ads. As I mentioned in the beginning, that is very important to find that piece that is making the difference. In terms of best performing ones, I think, or let's say better, positive examples. There are those advertisers who really know their clients, their audiences, and what they are doing is to make sure that they serve access to those clients as often as possible, different types of content, so that they avoid eventual fatigue. And they are the ones, and by doing that, they're also thinking not only short term but also mid and long term. Because of course, while it is important to generate or distribute the content, you need to have that content at hand when you need it, when the right moment has occurred, when a user has performed a certain activity that has triggered a request from the brand. So having this mid, long-term approach towards your initial concepts, your initial hero assets that can be used for longer periods of time is definitely a differentiator when it comes to overall performance and optimization of the post-production processes.
Interesting. I agree with you both. I think people's attention spans are actually quite shortened right now. So it's probably good to, one, keep it short and sweet, not put everything into one very long video, but in the same time, I guess having multiple touch points that are slightly entertaining is probably very important. Because if I just think of myself personally, I don't think I've ever bought something from an ad that I've seen just once. So need to warm up to the brand a bit. After I've warmed up, maybe I will consider, okay, maybe I will click on this ad and download this app or buy that skirt. So, and we've gotten to the end of our session. So I would like to let you now tell our audience where they can learn more about your company, and do you have anything new and exciting coming up in the upcoming period?
All right. So from my side, you can go to playtika.com and learn more about the games we have available. But also download Governor of Poker 3. That is the main game in the Yuda studio. It is available on Google Play and App Store. It is an online multiplayer poker game suitable for both beginners and experienced players. So it's quite fun, guys. So we just rolled out some new features and some exciting events for the end of the year. So check it out. Also, if you want to chat more about creatives, don't hesitate to reach out to me on LinkedIn.
I'm also active on LinkedIn. It's very easy to find me if you just Google do a search. They're very excited to be able to share from my experience with you, Joanna, and thank you for having me here together with Livia. As what's next on the agenda? So. As I said in the beginning, StoryTech is an automation platform, but it is important to understand that technology can help you out when you reach to a, let's say, certain threshold or a certain point. So it is important to focus on getting that technology that is relevant for you at the moment where you are in your, let's say, content process. Sometimes it can be more efficient to just go the traditional way. Well, of course, sometimes when you feel certain pain points, automation or technology in general can facilitate that content. So my final advice would be just to buy carefully and only when situation requires it, and not just because it's cool to do it.
Thank you. Looking out for us. Well, this wraps up our session. So I will leave you guys to it. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you very much.